We've just had the finish of leg 2 of the Ocean Race Europe, and we thought we're not really going to get a better opportunity than this to come out and take a look at all the boats that are moored in the harbour here after 2 offshore legs and a coastal. So we sort of borrowed a rib, and we're going to take a little bit of a look around and see what we can see. We've got 5 of the IMOCA 60s in the harbour, relaxing, with the crew now basically ashore recuperating, and this is offshore Team Germany. So this is one of the older generation IMOCA 60s. I think this was 2012, 2011. So I think a lot of people assume that this boat wouldn't really be performing, but right now it's sitting well, joint first. With a tie break, they're finished in 2nd place, but they've had an incredibly good run of it. We've had sort of a lot of upwind, and it's featured very well for that boat. But one of the boats I really want to take a look at here, because there's something that offshore Team Germany doesn't have: foils. So offshore Team Germany, as we say, a fairly sort of conventional, or what would be considered a conventional boat, but in the IMOCA 60s is fairly conventional. This is the boat that really interests me. So this is Bureau Valet. As I just get up a little bit closer, you have to be a bit careful as to how you manoeuvre here, because they're fairly delicate boats, and the sailors get quite protective of them for reasons that I'm sure you can understand. This is just about as cool as they get, really. So you can see the enormous foils sticking out the side, and don't be fooled if you've been watching the America's Cup, or if you're familiar with foiling moths and things like that. People get very excited that these foils are about just throwing the boat up in the air and get them flying as high as possible. It's not really what's going on. You can do a bit of that, but it's really to sort of rotate the boat, pivot the boat. It's to give it that sort of side force without the need of an incredibly heavy bulb underneath. They still do have a bulb, but the side force from the foil does a lot of that, well, heavy lifting, if you like. But the really interesting thing is what shapes they can come up with on the drawing board to try and get the best amount of force, tempered with the fact that, I mean, you just take a look at the size of that foil. If it's light winds, you've got to drag that thing through the water. So you want it big enough to lift you and rotate you, but you want it small enough that it's not going to get in the way. I'm getting a little bit close here, so I'm just going to back off. There we go. But that whole, when the foil does lift the boat, all of that weight, that whole weight is taken on those bearing points inside the hull. So what I'll do is I'll just come around to the right now, and we'll have a little look from the stern. I do drive ribs for a living, but I'm actually quite nervous here, because I can imagine these sailors will get a little bit touchy if we get a little bit too close. Other things to point out, if you're an IMOCA 60 fan, you'll know all about this, but if you're not, it's a little bit unusual, is the deck spreaders. So with the mast on the IMOCA 60s, you don't find the spreaders like you do on the VO65s or pretty much any conventional rig. You've got the deck spreaders that come out, support the rig. They'll also help support the sails. But what that means is the mast can rotate as well. So the masts are a little bit more bladed, like a very sort of shallow wing, and you can get a bit of rotation. That helps control the sail shape, basically. You can do some pretty funky things with it. So there's the back of the boat, very low cabin. This is where we see all the sailors kind of hunkered down and looking after themselves. Not very comfortable in there, though, I'm sort of led to believe. Ooh. Now let's have a look at Coram here. So we're just going to go off to the right and have a little nosy around with Coram. And straight away, I'm going to just try and get to the side so we don't get too much sun in the camera, because the big thing to notice straight away is how different the foil shape is on Coram. So massive curves on Bureau Valet, whereas on Coram they are, I wouldn't say horizontal, but they're pre-horizontal. They've got an awful lot of sort of horizontal length in them. And also, big difference is, you can see how much Bureau Valet manages to get their foils right the way up in the water. But have a little look at this. So this is the foil fully retracted now, and it's still lapping the water. It's still in the water. A bit of heel and that might come out, but basically that's of two very, very, very different approaches. We're just going to go around the stern here of Coram and see what we can see. We've got somebody here working away. Hello. Don't mind us. Well, we're just being nosy. So these little carbon bucket seats on either side, this was something that they supposedly kind of rigged up for the Ocean Race Europe to give the helm a place to be. Normally you're sailing on your own, you wouldn't really do a lot of helming, but you've got 4 or 5 people on board, you might as well do some helming. So it's a little more comfortable sort of station, and I'm just going to go around here, and this is where the person filming me, Austin's going to tell me if I start drooling a little bit too much, because the foil on this side is just out of the water, and I don't know, I don't think you need to know a lot about aerodynamics and hydrodynamics and flow and lift and drag to find that shape quite intriguing. You've got those sort of fins, fences, blades are down there to sort of control the flow and stop getting any kind of ventilation, I guess. It's not really kind of my forte, but yeah, and it's swept back as well. Right, I'm going to move on. What I could do is I could stay here for a long time and I could talk about that foil for a long time, but I won't do that. I'll allow myself to kind of push forward, because for those of you that are interested in foils, this one might be quite good to look at. This is Linked Out, and Linked Out have got 2 different foils. And the reason they've got 2 different foils, from what we understand, is they did a bit of damage to one before the event, and so they didn't have a like-for-like replacement. So they've ended up with 2 that are slightly different. But I'll just turn here and we'll get them. Sorry, it's my rib driving skills. We'll turn in here and we'll just get underneath and have a little bit of a look. Don't want to get so close. Okay, yeah, there's a gentleman there who's half dressed on board that boat, so that's fine. We're just going to keep the camera on me for a second. So these are the foils on Linked Out. You don't need me to point out just how unbelievably different all the different approaches are, and that sort of double S shape that they've got in there, that's sort of working the bend and the structure of that foil in a slightly different way. So when it's loaded, it's going to behave itself a little bit differently. Really unusual bow shapes on all of the IMOCA 60s, certainly for somebody like me who's not really used to a boat like that. And then just how incredibly wide the whole things are. I wanted to do a little bit more peeking in the cockpit, but annoyingly there's a few too many sailors. I don't really want to make them feel like they're animals in a zoo. So we'll whiz over here. This is 11th hour racing. So this is the boat that at the moment is joint on points with Offshore Team Germany. And again, this is a bit of an old boat, this one. This is the old Hugo Boss. I'm thinking it's 2016. I might have that wrong, and I'm sure if I do, people will let me know. But yeah, this is quite a nice looking boat. Yeah, that's quite good. I'm going to just try and sort of stop there a little bit, just so we can kind of just get the kill that way. You can see, if you can see behind me there, I'll just pull back a little bit so I don't block it too much. But there's a lot going on in that cockpit. At one level, it's very simple. You've got one pedestal, so you can have 2 people on it either side. But ultimately, there's an awful lot of sort of readouts and data and screens, and yeah, I'd love to know what was written on all those sheets. But I'm reasonably confident that they're not gonna tell us that. So yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, 2 rudders up. This is something that we've seen them doing quite a lot on the light winds, actually, that we've been racing them in the Med. They can lift one of the rudders. Can't do that on a VO65. Lift one of the rudders, and then there's just a little bit less drag. You're going slowly. It's easy to control the boat with one rudder. Why do you need 2? Lift one up, you go a little bit faster. And then if it gets a little bit breezier, maybe you can put 2 down, but realistically you kind of only just want the leeward one down. And we're just going to nestle up here, and we'll kind of come around to the bow. But Yeah, it's a good looking boat considering how far the designs keep kind of moving on. I'm not sure I'd want to walk on a black deck in the Mediterranean in bare feet, but it's all right, they haven't asked me to go sailing with them. So we better give this rib back. 5 IMOCA 60s, all of them here for the Ocean Race Europe, and you know, as we've said before, we've already had 2 offshore legs, we've had a coastal leg, and the thing that's really interesting is, I mean, no one really predicted that the way the scoreboard is now was going to be the way that it was laid out. We have an old boat doing really well, obviously a very good team. We have new boats maybe yet to find out exactly the settings that they need to use, but every single one of these boats is coming at this from a very different angles, with it being the foils, the cockpit layout, the design of the hull, and this is it. The only way you're going to know whether you've made the right call in your design or how you're sailing it is on the racetrack. Right now it's pretty close, but we've got one more offshore leg and we've got another coastal to go. It's going to be very interesting to see who has made the right call and who manages to get the best out of their boat.